I don't want to say extremes, but we all exist on a spectrum somewhere, and that I think also applies to any change that we're looking to make in our lives. Now, for me, yeah, I've been vegan for over 17 years. That's what I am. Like, I am vegan 100%. I'm not practicing it. I'm not looking to, it's a step into a different direction. But there is a bit of a misconception, and sometimes that misconception is brought upon by vegans or vegetarians themselves, and that vegans are some sort of elevated status in society. Like, we're better, we're perfect. We've reached this place where we don't cause any harm to anybody in any way, and it's just not accurate.
All right, here we are, Rise, Grind, Repeat podcast, episode 3 with Mike Cass, good friend, colleague, and should I say vegan, practicing vegan? What's the proper, we kind of talked about it yesterday.
Yeah, well, at first, thanks for having me. Absolutely amazing. Congratulations that this has come off the ground. You guys have this going now. I know you've been working on it for a long time, so I'm a little concerned that you saw me as somebody who could provide value.
Absolutely. Hey.
But super psyched to be here. Yeah, so what you're talking about is you had asked yesterday, which I'm assuming in your mind was a pretty simple question, right? Should I introduce you as vegan or practicing vegan?
Yeah.
And,
vegan activist?
Yeah, any of those things. Yeah. And when I got the message, it was like, well, I'm vegan. Like, what does that even mean? What is a practicing vegan?
Yeah.
But I started to think more about, like, well, what could that mean? Or how did you mean it? And rather than answering you, I said, why don't we start the podcast off with that?
Yeah,
so my question to you guys would be is, how would you differentiate what is a vegan versus a practicing vegan?
Ooh, great question.
Well, good, right, yeah. So I guess, obviously there's people that try it,
yeah,
and it doesn't take, or they'll say, well, I'm a vegan, I don't eat meat, but I eat eggs,
yeah,
or so from that perspective, I mean, I don't assume you're going to go off being a vegan. You're it's a lifestyle that you've adapted, and that's you're all in. But I think there's people that are probably not exactly in your wheelhouse, in the same wheelhouse as you are, and you're taking it to, you're also, deep diving into it, and now trying to share that information and the knowledge that you're learning, all the benefits, both physically and then from a humane perspective for the animals. So that's kind of where I was kind of coming from, and
What about you?
And for me, I have been a vegan or have eaten a vegan diet for a number of years, but am now more what they call a pescatarian, which means I'll eat fish, and it's part of it has to do more with social acceptance. It's easier to go out to dinner with people and just have some fish, and I'm also not opposed to eating very small amounts of protein. I like to think of it as if I was left on an island, would I actually eat it?
Yeah.
Fish, I probably would, but I probably wouldn't do it that much. So.
Yeah. There's an old question about that. If you were on a deserted island and there was a pig there, would you eat the pig? I'm like, well, I'd eat what the pig was eating.
Right.
But it's one of those many questions and scenarios in which people like to introduce to vegans in different ways. But what I liked about the question and what made me think about it was, you're right? There are different sort of, I don't want to say extremes, but we all exist on a spectrum somewhere, and that I think also applies to any change that we're looking to make in our lives. Now, for me, yeah, I've been vegan for over 17 years. That's what I am. Like, I am vegan 100%. I'm not practicing it. I'm not looking to, it's a step into a different direction. But there is a bit of a misconception, and sometimes that misconception is brought upon by vegans or vegetarians themselves, and that vegans are some sort of elevated status in society. Like, we're better, we're perfect. We've reached this place where we don't cause any harm to anybody in any way, and it's just not accurate. Unfortunately, there's always some form of cruelty in the world that even vegans are contributing to. So if you think about grain that's fed to cattle in order to produce meat, so that's the ratios on that are pretty extreme. I think it's 16 pounds of grain to get 1 pound of beef. But within that process, there's animals living in these fields that are probably ground up and accidentally killed that help produce the product products that we do eat. So there's no such thing as a perfect diet when it comes to not contributing to any form of cruelty. So some vegans, unfortunately, will carry themselves in that way, though, that I do this, I'm this thing, I'm better than you because you don't. When the real opportunity is to have a more engaging conversation with somebody to help them understand and maybe question some of the things that they've always believed, as I did. I was 31 when I became vegan, so that means that for 30 some odd years of my life, I didn't know any of the information I know now. And I know what it's like to start to learn and maybe not pay much attention because it was either too inconvenient or too hurtful. I know what it's like to be vegetarian and look at vegans like they're extreme. I know what it's like to then make a transition in my life where I'm now vegan. So I think I like to believe I can relate to most anybody else's experience in some way. And that's a really important part, right? So being vegan or practicing vegan, it doesn't matter. It's, what journey are you on and how can I support you in that journey based on my own life experience and what I've come across and what I've learned. So that's the approach I take to it. But it was just such a small question that in my mind was like, yeah, I'm vegan. But it's like, well, no, actually, wait, let's think about this. Like, I wonder how Joe means it and what else could it look like? And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and well, before I get to the other question I wanted to ask, so you had said you've been a vegan for 17 years. Yeah. So talk to me about what made you transition 17 years ago to become a vegan?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I used to work in a location that had me drive to work and from work every day by a cow pasture. And, I think as most children, I certainly had an affection for animals. We had dogs and cats and birds and rabbits. I used to, catch frogs and snakes and bring them home, much to my mother's chagrin. But I always had a connection with animals, but never a connection to the animals that we ate, how they arrived on our plate. So I drive by these cows every day and just admire them. Like, hey, look at them. They're just chilling out in the sun. They're eating their grass and not bothering anyone. And just slowly in my mind, I'm like, well, what did I have for lunch today? I'm like, I had a hamburger. Like, I'm eating them. Like, that didn't sit well with me. Right. So in that moment, I just stopped, became vegetarian. There was a young lady that I worked with who was vegan. And like I said before, I remember, like, that's a bit much. Like, you're vegan. Like, you don't do anything. Like, you don't drink milk. You don't wear leather. But the more I thought about it and the more I researched it, the more it made sense. Yeah. So it's funny. I always, wouldn't it be neat to have, like, this really compelling story of, like, how I became vegan? Like, I overcame some traumatic situation in my life and stood up top of a mountain in the sunshine. You will be vegan. It's kind of boring, actually. It was just more of a, if anything, if there's a lesson in it, hopefully it's that there was a desire to examine beliefs that were once held, right? And in thinking through that and then connecting some dots for me, it wasn't something for me. It wasn't something I wanted to participate in.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's, I was going to say, so for well, let me go to Tim. So Tim, same question. What made you decide to take that path?
Great question. In college, I had been a vegetarian. I've been omnivore most of my life, and then a few years back, probably getting close to 10 years ago, my mother had a heart attack. My father had passed away from a lung disease, and so has my older brother, but not heart related. But my mother had a heart attack, and so I was living in Philadelphia. She was living in New Hampshire, so I went up and stayed with her for a couple days in the hospital, kind of took care of her pets. And the first night I was there, they were serving my mother meatloaf. And I was kind of like, that doesn't really seem, she has a heart disease issue, and you're serving her meat. So that's when I started on going back towards more of a vegetarian approach, and started researching. And it's the synchronicity of if I'm interested in something, it starts coming up in my life where I start noticing different sources, and came across Forks Over Knives. And after watching that, I was kind of like, oh, this kind of ties in with, I never really thought we should be drinking or consuming milk from another species, and the whole animal protein connection with cancer and heart disease. So that kind of, like your epiphany, seeing the cow in the pasture, my epiphany was, oh wow, this is probably a good time to take a chance at this diet, because and that's what it was, a chance at this diet, because in college there were these misinformation about the only way you can get protein in a vegetarian is eating beans and rice in this ratio, and this was kind of blowing that up with like the China study and some things of that nature. So, and I'm a person that turns on a dime. So I started eating just a vegan diet, eliminated lots of things from my life, and became not a higher than thou. It was definitely out of health, but became a person that was probably difficult to live with because my diet changed so dramatically compared to the people that were in my life. So that's been my journey, is trying to eat healthy, not be a carbitarian. That's someone that just eats processed food. That's, sure, it fits in the vegan bandwagon, but there's just lots of salt and lots of processed things. I'm gaining weight. I don't know why.
It's an important point of distinction. Absolutely.
And that's been my journey. It's kind of I've been more vegan official, but it's the, I know what I should be eating. It makes me feel better, and then when I change or start negotiating things, it's cognitive load. I have to figure out, is this okay to eat? Whereas if it's a belief and you're just, no, I'm kosher, I don't do this, I don't eat those things, it's a lot easier to make decisions. So that's where I'm at right now. So the eating fish is a negotiation with myself, but it also ties in with different theories of evolution. And if we look at chimpanzees, they'll kill mammals and eat a little bit of protein. And I think it's like 1.7% of their diet might be animal protein. And we can digest it. So it's not. I don't think it's super healthy. But I started using the filter of, if I can kill it and eat it myself, if I had to, I can eat it. I like the taste of fish, and I might have it once a month. So it's more that kind of negotiation and kind of working in the Western society about the diets. So.
And how long has that been, Tim? When did this start?
Let's see. I started, it was like 7 years ago when I flipped the switch first. And then the last year and a half, it's been introducing fish. And there's the aquatic ape theory that also kind of ties into mammals that don't have hair, probably had a little bit more water background. We love to be at the ocean. Maybe we're eating, a little bit of things from the ocean while we're there evolving too. So.
See, I can relate as far as like maybe the label perspective, because when I was going through my or now that I have the food allergy and with the gluten allergy, it's one of those things where I had to avoid, gluten. And but anytime, I go to a restaurant or whatever, and you ask for the gluten-free menu or whatever, it's like I'm that guy now, or whatever. And amongst my friends and stuff, it just makes things difficult. If you're drinking beer or whatever, it's like whole thing. But what interested me, about you specifically too, was the fact that because I am changing my diet and everything, even though I'm still eating meat, it's like I'd like to, right now I'm just experimenting with everything, whether it's my workout, diet, meditation, and it's one thing that I want to, I feel as healthy as I have ever been now, but is there room for improvement? And that's one of the things that I do want to strive to do, and just, let me do this for maybe 30 days and see the benefits in general, just from a physical perspective, but even from a humane perspective, when you look into that research and you really think about it. So it's not that, your story's not that crazy just to drive by, because it's like I drive by farms all the time, and you think, they're just getting fed to put out to slaughter, and it is pretty sad when you think about that from a perspective there as well.
For sure. And I think it's interesting. There's so much, even what you were talking about, Tim, around sort of evolutionary evidence and nutritional research and science, and there's so much information out there. And when you're talking about health and nutrition in particular, right? So there's generally 3 reasons why somebody would be vegan or adopt a whole food plant-based diet. And we can talk about what those 2 differences between veganism and whole food plant-based diet would be. And the interesting thing is that most people agree with the principal reasons why somebody would be vegan, right? Meaning that most people are against needless animal suffering, abuse, and death. Most people would prefer to live in good health than poor. And most people would prefer, as it relates to the environment, at a minimum, to have access to clean air and water. Right? So if most people can agree with those, or we can assume that most people would, then everything else that we do is about a series of trade-offs. right? So what trade-offs are we willing to make based on whatever perceived value we would receive in the choices that we make around the foods that we eat? But every time we would eat something that's animal-based, I'll go back to when I was 25 or 27 years old, every time that I ate something animal-based, I'm voting against those statements, right, of sort of my level of agreement. But those topics, health in particular, is such a huge topic and so ripe for debate and confusion, some of it natural, some of it on purpose. And that's why it's really hard sometimes when people say, well, this diet's better than that diet, and this is the healthiest diet, and this is the healthiest diet. And if you're someone looking to just, how can I improve? How can I optimize? What's the right diet for me? It's so easy to give up, right? Because there's just so much contradicting information out there. It's like, what do you do? Like, where do you put your faith and trust? And a lot of it sometimes does come down to the things that you do, Joe. It's like, I'm going to experiment. I'm going to see what it looks like, how it feels, what the immediate impact will be. Yeah. I think the benefit of oftentimes a plant-based diet, and you made a really good point, veganism isn't necessarily healthy, right? It just means that you're not partaking in it. But when you talk about making those choices and seeing what it is that you're going to try differently, there's that whole short-term versus long-term effect too. And I think that's one of the things that plant-based eating has in its advantage is that, for as far as we can tell, there's both the short-term and the long-term benefits to it. So you'd feel better, depending on sort of the elimination process. Maybe you're cutting dairy out first, then meat, whatever that looks like. You'll likely feel better in the short term, and the science seems to indicate that you'll feel better in the long term. Whereas you could find some diets that I do feel better now. I started doing this thing, and I do feel better, but you might be doing great harm to yourself in the long run. And you mentioned, we're capable of eating meat, and we're capable of eating fish and drinking milk, or our bodies handle it. But we're also capable of drinking our own urine, right, and abusing drugs and alcohol and smoking and other things that can be harmful to us in the long run. And that's kind of one of the theories out there. But if you look at it from an evolutionary standpoint, we reach our reproductive time of our lives around 15. And then we're in our prime for the next 10 to 15 years. And then you're raising your offspring for the next 10 to 15 years. So you're around 40, 45 now. From an evolutionary standpoint, we're kind of done with you, right? You've completed your purpose. You've procreated and you've raised your offspring. So that's when you'll start to see a lot of these cancers and diabetes and heart disease and Alzheimer's and dementia start to tick up. It's because, we're capable of eating these things now, absolutely. But is it the right thing to do for our health? And I'm not an expert, right? I've looked at the nutrition and I studied the research and I looked at the science, and to me it seems pretty clear. I'm biased, right? Because I'm obviously in favor of not eating animals for the ethical reasons. But there seems to be a lot of research that would support that.
Yeah, I just came across a video, and I forgot who the doctor was talking about it, but basically saying how, our digestive tract, it takes 72 hours to process, I think it's cooked meat. And so during those 72 hours, it's similar to if you had a piece of raw meat that's sitting outside in the summer for 72 hours, what's going to happen? Right. And that same, process of meat rotting and the bacteria and stuff that's happening in your body until that passes through, which is when you start thinking about it from that perspective, where if you eat fruit, that passes through your system within a half hour to 3 hours, and then vegetables, I think it's maybe up to 12 hours. But when you start talking about from a health perspective, meat, it's that obviously can't be doing good things for you for sure. Yeah. The other thing they said too was when you start eating things that have some type of consciousness, the closer it is to yourself, to humans. You're when you're eating that animal, you're ingesting, or whether it's a plant or whatever, you're ingesting that DNA and you're absorbing, you're becoming, that banana you're eating is now becoming part of you. So if you take that, from a meat perspective too, it's like you're, and whatever those animals are being fed, and if they're getting injected with hormones, there's that as well. And then there's another piece that I came across too, where I think it was Gershon who had said that. So basically, when animals eat other animals, they when they're being chased, and the fight or flight kicks in, and the adrenalines kick in, and you'll see when an animal catches another animal, it'll play with it. It looks like it, it'll grab it, it'll wound it, and it'll sit there and it won't eat it right away. And that's because there's toxins within that animal, the blood, because of that adrenaline. So what the animal's doing is waiting for those those toxins to release from that animal before it starts to eat it. Now, when we eat meat, a lot of times these, if it's not a free range animal or whatever, they're in these, cages, or they're cooped up in these, so when they're killed, they're not, we're eating them with that, those toxins still in them, because we're not waiting for the adrenaline to release and
complete and
whatnot.
utter fear at that time. And they feel that stress and they feel that fear. And you're right. There is science or discussion around sort of what does that look like from a cellular level when you're ingesting it, and what does it do to us as individuals. And it's interesting. And you were talking about the digestive process and that digestive tract piece. And one of the things that will come up, and one of the reasons I established my website was to help people have more engaging conversations around the topics of the things that are generally presented to vegetarians or vegans as some of the rationale why we should or shouldn't do something. So we're carnivores is one of the more popular ones. And, I think a lot of people base that carnivore piece on shared behavior, right? So carnivores eat meat, we eat meat, we must be carnivores. But the reality is that we're actually there's very little in common with us and carnivores. I mean, you think about it, like, they have these huge fangs. We have these, we like to think we have these really sharp canine teeth, right? Look at a lion versus us, and it's not even the same. But, mouth circumference to head size of a carnivore versus a human, claws versus fingers, they pant, we sweat. But digestive tract in particular,
shorter,
super short, right? They have to process that raw meat and get it out of their system relatively quickly, whereas we have a significantly longer digestive tract. So, again, I think a lot of times we associate behavior with shared classifications, if you will. So we're not carnivores. People will like to say that. But I always make the point when I'm ever either having the conversation about someone's asked me something like that, or having the conversation to give advice to somebody and how to handle that conversation. There's a few really important points to remember as it relates to having those conversations. First, you should always answer that question as if it's the first time you've ever heard it. Right? Because it might be their first time ever thinking about it or asking it. And if you present yourself in that time as dismissive, or make them feel less than for asking that question, when they were showing a general curiosity in veganism, you've failed. And the second part is, unless you were born and raised vegan, which is likely a very small percentage of the population, you ate meat once. I ate meat. I drank milk. I ate cheese. I wore leather. I wore wool. I know all those things. I know what it's like. So I've had the same thought. So to make it relatable, it's important to thank them for asking the question. Let them know that you've had the same question. So it's normal to have that thought. Let me tell you what I've learned over time. And then hopefully you're having a more meaningful conversation. And I think that's such an important part, and something that's just missing in all walks of life right now, is the desire to have a meaningful conversation and not win an argument or a debate.
Yeah, and we'll definitely have to share the your website for sure. We'll put it in the description below this video. And if you want to give that as well now, that's good.
Yeah,
too.
it's being3.com, and it's based on the concept of, if you want to create meaningful change in the world, start by influencing 3 people. And if those 3 people influence 3 people, that process only has to repeat itself 18 times to reach the population of the U.S., right? So it magnifies that. So it multiplies that quickly. It seems a bit sort of out there, right? Like, that's okay, is that going to work in that way? But it's an aspiration and it's a goal. But such a large part for me is helping people understand the right way to have a conversation around all of the things that come up around veganism, right? So where do you get your protein from? Milk's okay because cows aren't killed. We're carnivores. Animals eat animals, so should we. All of those different things that come up, there's an opportunity in there to have a really meaningful dialogue and conversation. And again, not make somebody feel foolish for having asked the question, or be dismissive in your response. So just start spewing out facts. Like, well, how do you get your protein? Plants make protein.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They do, right? The protein that the animals that you eat for protein eat the plants for their protein. You could take an approach like that, or you can make it more informative and more conversational. So, and I think that's missing, and an opportunity for people that are interested in engaging others in conversation, for the point of gaining that audience and hopefully creating a change and at least influencing somebody to think more about it, as opposed to just, you ask me a question, here's some information, I'm done, I've communicated with you. Well, no, you just said something. So a lot of it's based on that, and then I give some ideas on different ways that people can be involved to do other things, whether it's donating their time and money and where they can do that, starting a podcast, different ways you can lend your voice to that sort of animal movement or whatever that looks like for you, whether it's health or environmental concerns. So.
Yeah, and even the Yammer group you create at work is great too, because I see other people, just sharing, whether it's recipes, and things like that. It's just getting the message out there is important, and it's great. And it's that's how we kind of connected as far as I did want to learn more because I didn't want to. In the past, I probably was more closed-minded about these types of things, but it's as I'm on this journey, it's like I do want to educate myself more and get that knowledge and see what's working for other people on their journey. And it's great that Tim, you're kind of in the same boat where you guys already have this experience and on a day-to-day basis. So it's great to hear.
Yeah, and the Yammer, even the website and the Yammer group, and for people that don't know, so at work we all work together. I don't know if they know that or not. But yeah, so we have an internal Yammer group where we can have all these different subgroups and we can communicate with each other. But I had put together a presentation last year, I think it was around August, to share this sort of message around what veganism is, not only from the ethical standpoint, but from a health and environmental standpoint, just to expose people to it and then invite in an audience later to say, hey, you want to keep this conversation going. But for me, the reason why I've done a lot of this was really the realization that, I became vegan 17 years ago, and for the first 14 years or so, I spent it as what I would say is kind of a quiet vegan. Like, it's my thing, I'm doing it, I feel good for having done it. If you ask me questions about it, I'll tell you why I do it, but I wouldn't really go out of my way and be the preachy vegan or sort of, create that social awkwardness, like we're out to dinner with your friends, like, here goes Mike again, he's just calling the waiter over and let's look at the menu and all that. I wanted to avoid that, but I realized that, and I think I might have shared this with you, Joe, but I realized that was in some ways similar to me standing on the edge of a park watching a bunch of older kids beat up a young kid, like bullying them.
Interesting.
And saying, I'm not doing it. I'm not participating in it, so I'm okay. Well, no, I'd get involved. Yeah. I'd want to advocate on behalf of that child being abused. Or same situation, maybe it's a dog. Maybe it's a cat. It's a cow, it's a pig, it doesn't matter. Like, I'd get involved. Like, there's a victim, and I want to try to help. So I realized that for me, I needed to do something more than just be vegan. I wanted to put my voice out in the world, and just trying to find different ways to do it. And I think it's been great because I know it's affected at least a handful of people, and maybe others that just, I haven't had a chance to circle back with yet. And again, so that whole concept of get three. Connect with 3 people, and then hopefully they'll take that further. And if I can help support that in some way, that's, I feel like I'm moving in a direction that I want to be.
Yeah, no, that's great, and it's funny because it's very similar. It's when I was going through the depression and stuff and getting out of it, it's like, okay, what can I do now to help give back, because I'm sure there's other people in the same situation, and it's this is great, and just the cause of to support it, and just 3 people. It's amazing how quickly if that did catch on. How it could reach the masses, Yeah,
that's the hope.
Yeah, for sure. So the other thing we were talking about too at work was the UFC fighter James Wilk. That's has a documentary coming out where he's interviewed in a bunch of different athletes, and there's a professional team too, right?
Yeah, so it's a documentary coming out. We're actually waiting for when it will. It was supposed to, at least the original indications were it was supposed to come out in February. And I think part of the reason for the delay is, so 15 members of the Tennessee Titans,
that's right.
on the defensive side of the ball, have turned to a vegan diet. And I think that sort of backed up production a little bit. But yeah, the documentary itself is called The Game Changers. And James Cameron is actually one of the directors as well, or maybe the director. He's involved in a big way. It's all about sort of breaking the stereotype of what being a vegan or plant-based athlete is. And it's demonstrating not just like, hey, it's not that this diet is limiting. it's actually that not only is it not limiting, but it will help you thrive. And you're seeing a lot of athletes like Kyrie Irving, Zdeno Chara, these guys, I think if it's in one thing in particular, they're seeing the lack of inflammation and their ability to heal quicker as sort of the big selling point of adopting to this. But this documentary, it has James taking us through all, bodybuilders, UFC fighters, professional basketball players, football players, all walks of life. These people that have adopted this diet and lifestyle that are excelling in what they do. But I think where you were going, Joe, was, I saw the trailer for this and I was like, this looks awesome.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if we could have a screening of this at work? So I sent an email to the generic Game Changers email address and said, hey, here's who I am and here's what I'm doing at work. I'd love to, never thinking anything's going to come of it.
Sure.
About a month and a half went by. I never heard from anybody. And a young lady wrote back. She's like, I'm so sorry. This got caught in the spam. But here's I'm copying James Wilkes to the reply. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, I know James Wilkes. I don't know if anybody doesn't know who James Wilkes is. I think he won, one of the early, was it UFC Ultimate Fighting?
Yep.
There's a show, right?
Yep.
He
Reality
won that
show,
early on. In,
The Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah. He's a pretty badass dude. So I wrote to him. I didn't hear back from him. A month and a half goes by. He wrote back. So sorry, it's got caught in my spam. I'm like, no worries. Like, hey, thanks for writing back. Had a kind of a quick exchange with him over email, and then he's like, well, why don't you give me a call? I'm like, all right. So gave him a call, didn't hear back, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna give these guys one more shot. It was like a Wednesday night. I'm like, oh, email. I'm like, hey, James, just circling back with you one more time. My phone rings like 5 minutes later, and it was him. And just had a half-hour conversation with the guy, just about like everything he's working on and where he's been and what he's doing, and his kids love Lego and all this cool stuff. And he's telling me, well, they're working with the CIA and Facebook and Google on having this screened. And I'm like, well, I got about 50 people in our Yammer group. He's like, that would be cool. Like, that would be a neat thing to do. And so we're hoping to have pulled this off, but I still don't know when the documentary is coming out. But yeah, just hopefully an example of if there's something that you want to try to achieve, reach out and ask.
Yeah.
You just don't know. Like, I would have never thought, like, okay. Like, maybe James Cameron will come too, right?
Yeah.
But and he wanted to come out, and not James Cameron, but James Wilkes, and be there for it. And nice. Like, how amazing would that be? So, I mean, I think even if that doesn't come together and we end up just showing the documentary, again, helping break some of those stereotypes of how people see veganism is huge.
Yeah. Well, even from my perspective on the gluten piece, it's same thing, inflammation. I mean, to the fact that we push bread and like it's healthy, whole wheat and this, and again, to see firsthand once I got rid of all that stuff, how much more energy I have is crazy. So it is great to see some of these documentaries coming out, educating us that, hey, it doesn't have to be, obviously everybody knows fast food's not healthy for you and whatever, but there's also non-fast food, processed food, that's not good for us. So it's good to see that stuff. And the other thing I want to mention too is it's funny because we've worked together for quite a few years, and I just found out within the last 6 months that you played hockey. And myself. So it's just interesting to find out. Now, did that play any type of role in your when you were a collegiate athlete and stuff? How was your training and your diet maybe different than what it is now? And
so, yeah, I mean, completely different in that it was completely irresponsible, right? I mean, just growing up back then. I mean, I grew up, I started playing hockey. I think I first learned to skate when I was 2. Wow. And just it was on skates just ever since I can remember. And it was everything. Played all year round, toured the country, Canada, playing with all-star teams. Had some great experiences skating with players I'm so old now. They've played in and have now left the NHL. Right? There's a time where I'd be like, I used to skate with those guys in the NHL, but they're all gone. Guys like Jeremy Roenick and Keith Tkachuk and Tony Amonte and Steve Hines and a lot of those guys, they played in the same. Amonte and Roenick didn't play in it was called the Catholic Conference out in Eastern Mass. Like, I played for Severian, and there was Catholic Memorial and
BC High.
Okay. Tony and Jeremy played for, I think, their academy, which was in a different sort of independent league. But we used to hook up with those those guys in the summer leagues and stuff like that. Actually, probably my claim to fame from a hockey standpoint is that after getting knocked down in the corner one time, Roenick stepped on the back of my leg, and I have 6 stitches in the back of my knee from Roenick State.
Yeah, that's it.
So pretty big deal. But from a nutrition standpoint, well before I had any idea about any of this stuff. So I ate the standard American diet, and was constantly active, and sort of back to that whole thing, like, we're able to eat these things, and we're able to achieve things while doing so. But what could we do, like, if we weren't, and we substituted those things for healthier food items? But yeah, that was a different time in my life. Might have been some alcohol involved back then too, maybe more so than necessary. And I was a terrible student.
Huh.
So I didn't finish school back then. I actually found a way off of the hockey teams because of my academic or lack of academic pursuits. Just I wasn't in a mindset that academics were important to me in my mind. So after leaving Severian, I went to Northeastern, and I was going to play hockey there, but didn't have the grades to do so. Went to Suffolk for half a year, was able to play there until I failed off of that team. Because in my mind, I was like, well, I'm a really good hockey player. I'm going to go pro, and I don't have to study.
Yeah.
Like, what a foolish thing to think. But in my mind at the time, it's what I was thinking. And guess what? You do have to study, and you do have to go to class, and you can't play pool and video games while you're supposed to be in your history class. So I became sort of disenfranchised with school altogether. Left, started a career in working, and just sort of got on this path of, I know I'm going well beyond your question.
No.
Got on this path of just, earning more money and just doing things I wasn't happy doing. And then I was working at the time for M&T Bank, and I was managing their sales division up in New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. This is before I got to Lego. And this is right before the last recession, so about 12 years ago. The bank shut down the operation. I was out of work. And I was out of work for 8 months. And it was terrible. Like, having your ability to provide for your family compromised is a hard reality. And it was a tough time for me. But one of the more frustrating things for me at that time was that I couldn't even get in the door for interviews, which I knew I was qualified for the job because I didn't have a degree. So my stubborn former self had put myself in this position now where it's like, I got to change this. I got to go back. And at the same time, now I have kids, and I'm trying to instill in them the value of an education while I didn't have one. And you could say you learn more from my failings, but so I went back. I actually graduated, I think, must have been 4 or 5 years ago now. But yeah, taking a full course load while working with raising kids and training for marathons and everything else I was doing at the time to complete that work. So maybe if I was eating better back then. I don't blame the food.
But isn't it? It's interesting that it's once you kind of had to take control, or and bear down, it's like you can accomplish anything that you set your mind to when you're ready. And unfortunately, I was kind of in a similar situation where I kind of graduated high school and started college early, and I really wasn't. I was only 17 when I started college. Wow. I really. I don't think I was kind of ready for it either, but it's funny because same thing where I ended up working, getting a job, and had some credits just floating out there, and then ended up just piecing together, getting those credits transferred, and just getting some type of degree so that I had it. But again, I worked at an insurance company before coming to Lego, and it's one of those things where I put on like 50 pounds, and it was, you're in a cubicle job, and there was layoffs, so more work was getting dumped on you and stuff. But it's like, for me, it's like I wasn't doing anything that I wanted to do, and what's nice is, with this is kind of what I went to school for, was not so much broadcasting, but I was hoping to be kind of behind the scenes and doing video editing and stuff like that. So now I put time into that, and it sounds like similar to that for you, where it's sometimes you have to kind of go through some of those hurdles to, and now it's like I'm reading more books now than I ever read in probably high school and college combined, but it's like you kind of have to want it, and when you're ready for it, is probably when that's gonna come. So you train for marathons too? Interesting.
Yeah, I've run 9 marathons, and it's interesting, sort of my marathon running began as sort of my hockey sort of career was ending in a way. So left college, moved out to Western Mass, got a job. A few years went by, started skating with a group of guys. A lady that I worked with, her husband had a team, kind of men's league type stuff. Yeah. Like, hey, do you want to join the team? Joined the team, started skating again, got back into it. Because I don't know about you, Joe, and your experience, but having played hockey since so young and all the time, I was burned out. Like, I loved the game, but I was burned out. So having a few years away, I think, did help create a bit of an appreciation again for the game. So I started skating with these guys, and that was just tremendous. Wonderful guys, great friends, having a few beers after the game, just a really wonderful experience. But I got to thinking, now at this point now, I'm watching Roenick in the pros, and I'm watching Amati in the pros, and I'm watching Tkachuk in the pros, and I used to hang with these guys, I used to skate with these guys, and, you know, I wonder if I could have made it, you know, and I don't want to be 40 and think, well, what if? So at the time, I started skating again more and more and more, was getting my legs back under me. Not the same, obviously, as skating, you know, high caliber hockey when you're playing in men's leagues, but I wrote to Tom Rowe, who was at that time the director of player operation for the Whalers. And I said, hey, so here's my background. You know, I played at this high school, went here, did these things. Here's my points. Here's my height and weight. All these different things. I'd love to get an opportunity to come out and go to camp. Like, sure, like, well, that's going to happen. He wrote me back, and he's like, I think the part he specifically was interested in was my size, right? So I'm 6'1". I used to be much bigger. It's like, yeah, why don't you come out to, at the time it was, not the Falcons. Were they the Falcons? What were they then? What are they now?
They were the Coyotes before the Falcons, I think.
They might have been the Indians when I was in camp. I forget that the Indians, the Falcons, they're everything. T-Birds now, I don't know.
Oh, you're talking about Springfield or the Hartford Whalers?
Springfield, yeah.
Oh, Springfield Indians.
I think it was the Indians. I'm trying to think of the timeline. This was back when I'm probably about 25, 26. Joel Quinville was the coach back then. So I show up. He's, come on out. And it was, at this point, it was after sort of the Whaler cuts have already taken place. Everybody was coming down to the Springfield team. Show up to the rink, checking at the table, like, oh yeah, we got you. I walk in with like my one stick in my bag, and like, well, what are you doing with that? I'm like, this is my stuff. He goes, come on, bring me into the stick room. He's like, can I pick out the sticks you want?
That's awesome.
Like, he tapes them all up. He gives me all the stuff. And I'm like, holy crap, like, this is amazing.
Sharpens your skates for
it was crazy, right? So I get out on the ice, and, you know, just too much time had passed. Right, so I was there for about 3-4 days. You know what it was? It was I think it was a combination conditioning, and it was a combination just the repetition of drills, right? Just sort of that, you know, how you, when you're going through these drills, just common drills, nothing crazy, but you just do them so often that it's just second nature. But for me, it was just, I had to think a bit more, like, just because I was just so out of the game for so long that I just didn't have it. Like, it wasn't there. So, you know, he had Joel had called me, and I forgot what the assistant coach, he goes, I really love your spirit. And you give me the whole thing, you know, and I'm like, I appreciate it. I wish I fought harder in that moment. Like, I just, you know, give me a little bit longer, and maybe it's just my conditioning, but I think I knew that just too much time had gone by. But I gave it a shot, you know, so, you know, I don't regret too much. And I think when you think about regret, it's hard, right? Because at that point now, you know, I'm married, and my family was to come, and so if that worked out, does the family end up coming in the same? Do I have my 3 kids? I don't know. So I try not to regret too many things like that. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Well, you definitely can't regret, because it's the same thing. It's like it would probably put you on a totally different trajectory, and your family would be, you know, it would be different for sure. Yeah.
So I think you were asking about marathons, though, before I got on that completely other.
But that's fascinating. But, and again, the fact that you went back and gave it a go, then you have no regrets. So otherwise, you probably live with that too, and be like, what if, you know? There'd
definitely be more of a what if for sure. Like, I wonder if but yeah, like maybe it wasn't meant to be. So
I'll tell you, a quick story. So a good friend of mine's sister married John Madden, who used to play for the New Jersey Devils and the Blackhawks. You know, so I was able to meet him, go to a couple Stanley Cup parties and stuff, and they lived up here up the road for a while, and during the off season he'd rent the rink in Cromwell and take his son out and skate and just condition a little bit. So he invited me and his brother-in-law, my friend, to go skate with him or whatever. So I had told my buddy, I'm like, I think I might be able to beat John in a race, you know, or whatever. So, but I had said that at work and just goofing around. So while we're out there, he says, hey, Joe, what did you say about John? You could beat him, in a race, right? So we lined up at the goal. He's like, yeah, let's give it a shot, So we lined up at the goal line, and he put a puck at center ice, So, and my buddy Ross, blew the whistle or whatever. He said, all right, go. And I mean, I was probably 10 strides in, he was already like 2 full lengths ahead of me, grabbed the puck and went down. So he goes, let's do it again. I'll give you a head start. I'm like, I go, I don't want no head start,
Yeah.
And the second time, I was a little bit closer, but it was just, you could tell just the, the difference is just is ridiculous, But it was just fun to just, go out there and give it a go.
That's
for
a
sure.
great memory, a great story, right? Like, who gets to do that? That's really cool.
So now with the marathons, because I run almost every day. Yeah. And in the morning I run 3 miles. But I've never signed up for a 5K or a half marathon or marathon. It's nothing that's really like intrigued me. Yeah. But I know a lot of people that that do, and for me it's like I want to do it, but I'm more concerned about like the waiting around. Like I don't want to sign up. Like when I run, it's like I go to the gym, I get it done. I want to get it done. I don't like necessarily enjoy the process sometimes.
I hear you.
So for me, it's like, do I want to sign up, wait around, and then is it a half hour, 45 minutes after you get there that you actually start running, But
depends on the race you're running, of course, and the distance. So I would say this: I'd recommend that you do one. Right? Yeah. If you're out there running anyways, pick a marathon and run it. If for no other reason, the experience of the crowd and the environment and all the other runners around you is a really cool and unique experience. So again, having played sports my entire life and transitioning to running, which was really just kind of on a bet. So it was Christmas one year, my brother-in-law, who would run the Boston Marathon every year with different charity groups, was getting ready to run it again and challenged me to do it. And like anything over beers, I'll do it. So I trained for it and ran it with my sister-in-law, so my wife's sister. So we banded it, the Boston Marathon, which at the time I didn't know was a thing. Like that's really frowned upon in the running community. And if someone's probably watching this now, they're like, that son of a bitch. You're not supposed to do it, right? But so banded is you don't have a number. So Boston Marathon, you have to qualify for it and or run it for a charity in order to get a bib. Anybody who doesn't do one of those two things, just shows up and runs it, which happens, is considered a bandit. And it's, again, especially I think in Boston, it's frowned upon. And there's different reasons why. I didn't know that. And I think I first came across the concept the night before. And I'm like, oh, crap. But I trained for it. So we were going to do it. And the first year we did it, it was this borderline. Are we going to have a blizzard? Or is it going to be just a significant amount of rain and wind? It was fortunately rain and wind. But it was the most amazing experience. It was just wall-to-wall people the entire route. And just nothing like I've experienced before. Because, when you're playing hockey in particular, you're locked in. You're on the ice. Yep. Sometimes you can hear the crowd, but they're everywhere. And you could feel their energy and their excitement. You're going by and you're highlighting little kids. And little kids looking at you like you're a pro athlete. Like, they don't know that you're finishing like an hour behind everybody else. They're just like, wow, that was really cool. But so then from there, I joined up with a charity out of Springfield called Griffin's Friends, which is part of the Bay State Hospital Network. And actually, the original Lego race that we put on was to benefit them, and then the last one was to benefit them. And they were a unique group in that they would get about 100 to 120 people to bus out to run the marathon. But we're technically bandits. I think at the marathon at the time sort of recognized that we were a charity group going out and doing our thing, but so didn't say, no, you can't, but didn't necessarily sponsor it as well. So ran a number of those. I was there when the bombs went off that year running for them. Broke my leg running that marathon one year. Just some interesting stories. But really wonderful experiences. Like, I've really enjoyed it, but I haven't run one in about 6 years. So maybe kind of your point, like I haven't felt the desire to run one. Still run all the time. I run about 30 miles a week, but just haven't felt like getting back out and doing it. Although this year is the 25th anniversary for Griffin Friends, so I'm thinking about getting back in and doing this one. They're actually establishing the first Springfield, Mass marathon in October this year, along with Fleet Feet, and so that's going to be really cool. So it'll be the first one ever. So I'll likely pick one up. So that might be a good one, Joe. I'll run it with you.
I'll do it with you.
Now you're in.
I'll do,
right?
now I have to.
Yeah.
Now I have to. Did you start the Lego 5K too?
I did, yeah.
You did, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so we founded that 7 years ago, and at the time that was just an aspiration to start a race and have some funds raised for Griffin's Friends, because I was very much involved with them and their cause. So yeah, it was funny when we started that race. I put a kind of feelers out to see who might be interested in helping. Got a few people that are interested, and a number of them are still on the committee today. But I'll never forget, like you advertise it, you put it out there, and anytime somebody would sign up online, you get an email confirmation, hey, someone signed up. And I would just watch that email box and be like, somebody please sign up. Somebody please sign up. Like, it would just, days would go by and nobody would sign up. I think we finished like 187 people altogether, which felt pretty good.
That's
I think
really
we raised
good.
like $7,000-8,000. And then, so fast forward to today, where the race sells out in like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And just like 700-800 people sign up for the race, and more would if we would allow it. But then we have these kids races that go on to, so hundreds and thousands of kids, not hundreds of thousands, but hundreds and thousands of kids over the years have come out and participated in that on campus. So, yeah, just another example of if there's something you see that you want to do and it doesn't exist, do it. You know, start something up. And I think that's one of the things that we're really fortunate about where we do work, is that that's supported, and encouraged.
Yep, for sure. Tim, any marathons? And
No. I'm more of a biker.
Tim's going to run a Springfield with us, Jeff.
Yeah.
What date is that?
It'll be October. You got plenty of time to train. Yeah.
Well, the Lego one's in September, right? So maybe I could do that one first to lead up to...
You're jumping from the 5K to the marathon.
To the marathon, yeah. Is it a full marathon or half marathon?
I actually think they'll do a half and a full, and maybe even a 10K. They might do all of it. Yeah, it's a great question. They might, but why just not go for the full one?
Just go for the full one.
Might as well lock it
How long do you train for that, for a full one?
So it depends, right?
Because you have to build up, right?
Yeah, you should build up, and you should build up in the right way. If you've been running, you've already established your base. It's just a matter of kind of, what's your long run now? Like, what's the longest you'll run?
I don't know. I mean, I stop at 3. I have my route, or I'll just
do a 3-mile loop. Or you run 3 miles. Okay.
Yeah, in a loop.
Yeah, so I mean, you have a good.
But I could keep going. It's just I have my loop, and then or in the winter I'm on the treadmill. You know, but I could keep going.
You have a base already established. I mean, I think and there's varying programs like there is in pretty much everything in life. But I think generally you're in that sort of 4-month window if you have a base that you could you just slowly build up. Like, how many days a week do you run?
At least 6.
So you're out there quite a bit. So one of those runs in the beginning just becomes a little bit longer. Yeah. So it's 4 this Sunday, and then maybe it's 5 the following, and then it's 6, and then maybe one of your midweek runs is also 5, and now you're doing 8 on the weekend. It's just a slow progression up. Yeah. And usually most marathon programs training programs have you capping out around 20 to 21 miles. Very rarely do you go all the way to 26 in training, which can be a little unnerving when you're first running. You're like, well, wait a minute.
I've
that
never
20
done
miles
it,
really hurt. Like, I'm going to go another 6. Right. But there is something to be said for, again, that feeling of being in the marathon and around other people and people cheering, that you do tap into this sort of deeper ability to push through it. And it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts. Sorry, I'm not going to try to blow smoke for you. It doesn't feel good, and the challenge is delaying that feeling as long as you can. Because if you're in a marathon and you start really hurting around 13, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
If you start hurting around 21, you're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a mind over matter. It's unbelievable what we can do.
Somebody had said, after either the 18 or 19 mile mark, it's like it's kind of downhill from there. Which, if you think about it, still 7 more miles, or
And it depends on the marathon, right? I mean, some are harder than others. Like Boston, you hit those hills, starting around 17, 18, heartbreak hills in that mix, and it's not necessarily that any of those hills are like really big climbs. It's just where they're happening in the race. Just at that point in time, I'm gonna keep climbing.
Mike, I was thinking of just doing what David Goggins, just go straight for 100 miles.
Amazing,
just do that, right?
That guy's different level.
That's crazy.
Are you familiar with him, that story? Yeah. Yeah. So he decided that he wanted to take part in a 100-mile race, but had to qualify for it, right? By having completed a 100-mile race. And what was it, like a 2 or 3 week window between
when the race was, and
So when he first decided?
And then what was it that when he tried to qualify, he did the 100 miles, but he didn't do it in the 24 hours, so they didn't let him in.
Yeah.
And then he
like the next weekend or something.
Yeah, it was crazy. You know,
unbelievable.
He had to go to the hospital, and that was after he went to the hospital for, being beat up from the first time.
Yeah,
you know?
I think he was pissing blood. Not a good sign.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Navy SEAL guy though, right?
Yeah.
They're wired differently.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Or they tap into something that we're all capable of. They've done it, and we still need to.
And I think he went through Hell Week 3 times.
Yeah, a couple times. Yeah, he enjoyed it so much the first. He wanted to go back.
Yeah, I mean, just some of those stories he would tell is just, to endure that type of, physical and mental. You got to be wired.
Yeah, and it's that mental part, right? I think from a physical standpoint, we're capable of doing so much more than we think. But yeah, it's our brains that shut us down more often than not. And definitely part of the marathon experience is that, I'm hurting right now. I want to stop. No, we're not going to stop. We're gonna run to that pole. We're going to run to that house or that street. We're going to run to this marker, whatever it might be, just breaking it down into chunks and just getting those little victories.
Yeah,
makes a big difference.
Yeah, when I do my planking, when I first started out at 2 minutes, I did that for a week, and then it was just like, let me see if I do 2 minutes, I could do 2:15, and then so 2:15 became 2:30, 2:30 became 2:40, and just incrementally work my way up, and it's like I'm at 23 minutes.
It's amazing.
Which is ridiculous, but again, it's like kind of even with the marathon thing, it's like you build up to that, and it's that mind over matter. It's when you get close to that time, it's like, well, you've done 13 minutes every day for 7 days, so why can't you do 13 minutes and 15 seconds?
Right.
Why can't you can? You have to kind of psych yourself up for it. And but even like that, your markers, it's like, if I could just get to that house, and you get to that house, if I could get to that, that light pole, and you just push yourself, and but anybody can do it. The mind is, you just have to, whatever that.
Understanding your why is a big part of it, right? Like, why do I want to do this thing? Why do I want to accomplish this? I'm testing myself. I'm trying to prove whatever it is, right? I mean, understanding that's a big part of it, because then when you're having those moments of doubts, you can return to that as the reason why. When I think about planking for 23 minutes, I think about it in 2 ways, right? Sort of that physical piece, like that's really hard, but then the mental piece, like what are you thinking about at minute 18? Like, what's going on in your mind? Is it that I'm going to go 15? I'm going to go 30 more? I'm going to go, or are you rocking out? Like, what are you doing?
So usually when I initially started, I didn't have anything, but once I got to 4-5 minutes, I needed something to either keep me occupied, so that's when I was watching those motivational videos, so it would be like, The Rock, it'd be, these people putting, music behind The Rock talking about his workout, and you see him working out or whatever. So I would just kind of use that as the continual driver. But it as far as when I hit 13 minutes or whatever, I know I've done it before, so it's not as big a deal. It's hard, but it's easier to push through. And I get the headset on, and I have a certain set of kind of motivational videos, like in the morning when I run at the gym, because I hate running on a treadmill. But then when it gets to be 5 degrees outside and snow, it's hard. That's the hard thing. I don't mind running in the cold, but once snow and ice, it ruins your the workout. So I have a series of I'll start off with Van Halen Jump, and then I'll go and I'll incrementally speed up the treadmill for each song. So it's like I know what's coming, after the next song. It's like boom, then I go here, then I go here, but I challenge myself, so the end, the last, 3/4 of a mile, I'm going at, whatever the new speed is, so this week it was 10.9, but so it's a full
speed
sprint.
Work too, right? You're ready for a marathon.
So full sprint. Yeah. I'm not, it's not easy, but I guess that is one thing that it would be nice to kind of check off is actually doing a full marathon, just so because I think I feel I know I can do it, but I know it's work and just leading up to that, and so I should challenge myself. Yeah.
Well,
so we'll do it. We'll do it together. Yeah.
So it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
And so you bike, Tim? Is that what
I
you're
do
saying?
bike, yeah.
And what does that look like?
I started doing the 5 at 5. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning and put 5 miles in, and then started extending it out because I wanted to keep it as a certain time zone or amount of time.
Yeah.
So it's incremental mileage increases, and then with winter, it's more of a trainer in the basement near the studio. So it is that repeat and increase a bit. It's that incremental. It's like purposeful practice. If you played the violin and you did the same practice every day, you would probably not get any better. You might even get a little bit worse. But if you have a little bit more, add a little bit more to it, like you do for your planking, that's purposeful practice. And that way you kind of increase and get more strength either in your technique or your mental state. And with biking or running or planking, it sounds like it's all pretty much a balance of both of those things. It's the body to mind. So.
Yeah, I think when people hear getting up at 5 to do 5 miles, like that feels really hard and foreign to them. What was it? Just for you automatically? I'm going to do this, and I did it, or
it's the Mel Robbins 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As you wake up, and as soon as I wake up every morning, even on weekends, I'm awake at 5 in the morning. When I travel, I even wake up at 5 in the morning.
Whether you like to or not.
Yes.
Very cool. Yeah, I was reading. Have you read Atomic Habits?
No.
It's like James Clear. It's actually really good. I think these things are always interesting, and you have start with why here on your desk. I think there's a part about when the point in life when you come across these different things, but it talks about how do we create and establish effective habits. When I think about I'm going to get up at 5 in the morning to do this thing, how do you create that habit? I think some people are capable of saying, well, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And I think for others it's difficult. And I know one of the things that I found in the book to be really helpful is the concept of habit stacking. Ever heard about that?
No.
Habit stacking. So I wanted to practice 10 minutes of mindfulness every day. And in order to try to establish that practice, the concept would be, well, look at your day, look at your life already. What are the things that you do every day automatically anyway? Like, so brushing your teeth, for example, when you get up in the morning, using the bathroom, showering, whatever your daily routine. There are things that you do every day no matter what. Well, one of the things that I do is I get to work, I put my laptop up, I go get a cup of coffee. Well, now before I get my coffee, I do my 10 minutes of mindfulness. So now that habit is stacked together, and that's helped me get into that. Now it's natural. I do it every day, even if I'm at home. Whereas in the past, I've struggled trying to get things like that off the ground. I was trying to will myself through it, and sometimes that worked, and sometimes it didn't. But that concept of creating an effective habit through, in this case, habit stacking has worked really well for me. So I'm not sure if there are other things you guys are working on.
So what I did. Incrementally, I was researching different things because I through planking, I came to this, epiphany where for whatever reason, I wasn't stressed. I couldn't be for 6 weeks, and that's where me and Tim kind of hooked up. And I'm like, Tim, I can't explain it, but nothing's stressing me out right now.
Were you looking for something, Tim?
No, but it was.
So
Tim? No, but
Tim
I was
stressed me out.
No, but I was going through like we had the layoffs at work.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago. My dad had passed away a couple of years before that, and then I was going through my my gluten allergy, where I had a staph infection, and that was a whole ordeal. But that's when I said I got to get my life back, and I started getting in shape and whatever, and I was planking and the videos, and so all these positive things started coming to me. I started reading, and so I was getting all these different tips from different books and different lectures, and even one of them that I used today was when the 7 Habits of Successful People. So the one thing I took from that when they came to Lego was the big rocks. Try and have 2 big rocks, a day, and then they broke it down into smaller ones and this. But it's like I only took the 2 big rocks out of that and said, okay, if I can get these 2 things done, every day, instead of having this long laundry list of things, if I can just do 2 things, then mentally I'll feel I accomplished something. But going back to the other habits piece where I was reading about meditation and and diet, exercise, reading, writing, the importance of that, I said, well, how can I get all these things done? How can I do 10 minutes of meditation and 10 minutes of writing? With 3 kids and all the other things, and it was, well, I have to get up early, and that's when I started. And again, I would get up at 6. So to try and get up a lot earlier just right off the bat was kind of difficult. So I incrementally backed that time up to 4:30 or to 5:35, and eventually now I'm up at 3:30. I'd like to be at the gym and get my run out of the way. But by doing that, I started writing down. So I created a weekly mindset, like a daily thing. So I have my daily habits that I do. So these are the things I do every day when I wake up. So I'll run, plank, do my push-ups, read, write, meditate.
Very cool.
And then I have my fasting, regimen. But I write it down every day, even though I know I'm going to do it, for that repetition to write it down. Then those are my 2 big rocks, the 2 things I want to get done. So I guess that is kind of like a habit stacking, if you will. But increment. I didn't just, I'm going to do all these things. It was like, I want to meditate. Let me work that in. Yeah. And then, the reading and writing piece and journaling and
Yeah, let's say it's easier to build upon an established habit than just start one from scratch, especially if it's a big change.
And if you could swap one out. So if there's one that's, not, I'm still, trying to not drink as much coffee, or not so much because of the coffee, but because of the cream and sugar that I like to put add into it. So, but that takes time, and sometimes it's, unless you want to try cold turkey, which some people can do.
In some ways it doesn't. But you're always exploring, Joe. That's the key.
That's it. Well, I think that's the journey I'm on. Is I'm just looking for different ways to just optimize life in general, and share that information for anyone that's struggling. And with 3 kids too, it's, I look, I want to leave something behind for them as well. If they run into a jam and when I'm not around, and maybe some of this information could be useful for them and other people as well,
Yeah, it reminds me of a number of years ago, the last lecture with Randy Posh. Have you remember that? Mm. Yeah, and he gave this amazing talk at Carnegie Mellon. I think Carnegie Mellon.
I'm not sure where it was.
And he has all these life lessons, and then the very last thing he says, "This talk wasn't for you; it was for my kids." Yeah. Right, so that will be left behind for them, and it did a lot of good for a lot of people. But just really powerful in that thought of, this is going to hopefully help people now, but it's going to be there for my kids too, and I think that's phenomenal. Do you think, or can you see seeds of this part of you that were there when you were younger, that kind of going through these hardships brought them out more, or do you think going through the hardships sort of created this desire in you?
As far as
this is desire to optimize and improve and be curious and help other people with these things.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's I think it's the fact that I didn't have it as a kid. If you talked to me 3 years ago, all this a vegan or gluten, and that's why it's like I try to take an outside approach, where I'm sure people look at me with the gluten issue, and it's like, here's Joe with his gluten, similar to the vegan piece. But no, I think this journey I'm on kind of transformed me in the fact that now I'm just putting myself out there more. It's like, this is who I am, and I think in the past it was more like you try and fit into these different pockets of how society wants you to be, and now with this breakthrough, it's I'm trying to be just more honest with myself and honest with everybody else, and to say, hey, I'm not perfect, and I'm not going to pretend to be perfect, and but there's there's different ways to approach life, and I'm trying to look at the positive aspects of everything, and trying to now just backwards engineer, how did I get to this place, and because I think a lot of people are trying to find happiness in this balance of what society thinks we should be, and what we can be, and what we should be, and yeah.
Very cool. And Tim, you're an artist.
Yes. And that's pretty much.
No, I was interested to learn. I didn't know this.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I am an artist, and I have a bachelor's and a master's in art, and have taught at college and university level. I've been in design and been a creative director and a partner in an agency. So I've done a lot of creative things, but I have been on a pursuit of sorting out why things, what's the meaning of life, I guess.
Yeah.
One of my grandmothers was a Christian Scientist, which is not Scientology. She's a Christian Scientist, which is a religion that was based on prayer healing people. So I grew up with exposure to mind over matter, that people you can affect your health by how you think about things. Is how I filtered what that was, and from that kind of have always been open to questioning what we're doing as far as behavior and food and things, with varying degrees of success and failure. But and that's part of my journey, is that I've had a lot of ups and downs and lots of failure and successes. But it's something where I'm perpetually trying to sort things out for myself, and I think I've learned early on that there's other people out there that if I can help them, they'll help me. It's kind of a choose your own adventure kind of life. You either choose something positive or negative, and if you have synchronicity and connect with someone, there's probably a chance that they're giving you something that's beneficial, and you can give them something beneficial by that experience. So. And that's a long story to explain that. Yes, I'm an artist.
Yeah.
I create things, and my art is sort of about this journey as well. So
yeah, I think it makes sense, right? There's an exploratory nature to that creative piece and that medium. And I haven't seen your art. Like, what do you work on?
I do a lot of painting, figurative, and now it's like getting into more 3D elements as well. So it's floating figures, which are kind of spiritual and awareness kind of representations, because everything that we see and everything we experience is really happening just in our brains. So it's all about consciousness and human experience. So
very cool.
Well, I'll jump in on his artwork. So I've been at Lego 4 years now, and the buzz when I first started was for the Christmas grab bag was everybody wanted Tim's gift, because Tim would always do some amazing artwork that was tied to Lego. And so I never got it. So, but the last year I'm like, I gotta figure out which one's Tim's grab bag gift, because I want it, And sure enough, I think you had gotten there first, so it's like I don't even know which one it could be, So I think it was the small print you did. It was all in pencil sketch. It was a pencil sketch, but he put it in this like inconspicuous like bag that like nobody would take. It was the last one taken, and it was his. And I'm like, of course, Tim put it in that bag. Of course,
disguised in brown paper. And
But his work is phenomenal. Yeah.
So have you made something for Joe then? It sounds like Joe wants something.
No, I do. I do want something. I told him, like, you have to bring something in. This is Jamie's from marketing. Yeah. He the ultimate warrior. But he does a bunch like that.
I have one of his pieces that's been kind of inspirational at home too.
What is it?
It's a scene of if you were lying on a raft and two pairs of legs, a male and a female, and it's a tall vertical piece, and you can see that they're laying on a raft. There's water, there's the shore, there's a house, and then there's the clouds, and it's all a vertical piece. It's really cool. Nice. It's like you're floating, looking down at them, which a lot of my work has floating people in it. So that's awesome.
We have a lot of creative people at Lego that are creative outside of what they do at Lego.
Absolutely. It makes sense though.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I'm not very creative though.
You're very creative.
Yeah, bummed out.
You're very creative.
We're all creative in some way, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, this has been quite a pleasure, Mike, having you on, and obviously we'll see you at work on Monday. But no, I definitely appreciate you coming on. I know we've talked about it for quite a bit, and again, we're going to leave the links to your website and in the comments in the description below.
Awesome.
And anything else we could do to help further this. I know for myself, I'm going to start today. What I'm going to do is challenge myself for 30 days. I'm going to do a vegan challenge, and I'm going to try this out, and I'll check back with you in 30 days and let you know how I'm doing.
Are you all geared up? You have a plan?
No.
You know what you're doing?
You're gonna help me. Once we're off the air, you're gonna give me the best approach.
Absolutely.
Well, great. It's been a pleasure, guys. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. I was nervous coming in, I gotta be honest.
Yeah.
But what a wonderful experience. So again, congratulations, and hopefully we get to do it again sometime in the future.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
It's awesome. See you. Yeah.
That was fun, guys.
Oh, good.
Is that good?
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I guess I'll, when I see what I sound and look like, I'll change my mind. But
I'm glad I see red back there, because I'm like, I think I hit record.
oh, imagine that. You'll do it all over again.